morning, everybody. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living. I want to say welcome especially to the people on our Zoom call. And throughout the week, there will be people watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and I want to welcome them also. If you're watching or you're here for the first time, please send us a message so Jimmy can send you an invite to the Zoom gatherings, because the best way to experience this, honestly, is to join Zoom, because after every gathering we have, no matter if it's a class or a Sunday morning, we have a very special time of personal sharing. We give you an opportunity to share on the lesson or on any issue you might have, and we find that's very enriching, because a lot of times the insight, the questions that people have are you may enjoy more than our talk as much as we. So I mean, it's true. It's really a wonderful and special time. Today, for inspiration, I was talking to Reverend Celeste Turkin, Dr. Reverend Celeste Turkin in Boca Raton, Florida, who's been a friend of mine for many years. And she had shared a talk with me, a lesson that she did not too long ago. And it was about meditation and its different forms. And she had a particular piece that she borrowed from Ernest Holmes, our founder, which he used the term bigger buckets. And I now know that phrase. I had it in context at last. It really tied into what Louise Hay was saying all the time. Well, she mentioned it. I've repeated it many times. The question is, what do you approach the ocean of life with? Is it a thimble? Is it a Dixie cup? Or, is it a small container? Do you feel you deserve little of the greatness of life? And it was Ernest Holmes who inspired Louise with the idea of, let's have some bigger buckets here. So it's today we're going to call the title of the talk "Bigger Buckets," though the talk has a lot to do with meditation. So before I get into the lesson, I'd like to acknowledge again all the people on the call who are signing in now. Usually we have a few coming in right about now. I'm glad you found us, however you found us. If you send Jimmy your, what does he need? Email, phone number, he will send you our weekly e-letter. It will have spiritual gems in it from time to time, and it will always keep you up to date. We do send out a text before our event to remind you. We're building one of the larger social media broadcasts in the country, and we lowered our. We used to have a $50 a month membership fee, and we've lowered that this year to $50. It's like an entry point, and really what that does, it allows us to fund all of our reach out from coast to coast. So if you'd like to support us and become a member, there's all kinds of buttons on all the social media. And just send a message to Jimmy or the center and we will include you. It's a good way to support the center, and it gives you access to a lot of wonderful material. And if those of you, if $50 is a challenge, let us know. We'll probably find a way to scholarship you. But the main thing is get involved, and we will we'll invite you to all the things we do. So there's always an opportunity again to share after every gathering. We never want you to feel like you have to share, because some of you are at work or you're listening in places where you can't, and we know that. So we go around and we ask you, you might comment, hey, I'm from Alabama, or I'm from Nebraska, or I'm from, two blocks away. So you can say hello and, whatever you might have thought about what was shared. So again, we invite you to be virtual members. We'd love to receive you. And now we're beginning to be here physically in the building again, which is very exciting for us. Over the past 4 weeks, we've had 3 or 4 people, 5 people every week. So we want to have our staff here to welcome you as well. Some of us have gotten pretty used to just being in front of our television screens or our devices. So if you're able and you're in the New York area, please come in and join us, and we'd like to see you in person if we can. So those are my commercials. So again, and last time, send Jimmy a message, send us a text, and we will include you, invite you into our community formally, which is basically a note, and we'll give you whatever instructions you need. Also with our membership, we include a couple consultations, you could call them prayer sessions, a little bit of counseling if you need it. And we're happy to do that. You know, we don't have a lot of people to do that, but we have enough, it seems, to take the inbound calls. And I know it's been very helpful to some of you because I get the calls myself. So if you ever have a problem, get a hold of the center, and Jimmy will get a hold of me, or if you prefer, Judith is here to serve you, help you also. And anybody who wants to make a donation apart from the membership drive, the $50 virtual membership drive, you can always donate to the center any amount of money you feel inspired to, simply by selecting one of the buttons. We as a center are always here to uplift you and remind you of the wonder of you. And that might sound strange to you, but really, there is that which is within you that's amazing. And if you're, the old timers here will absolutely understand what I'm talking about. The newer people may not know that. The new people may be thinking that this power that many of us have all our lives called God, this power is a part of you. It's in you, it operates through you. It's in all things and everywhere. Ernest Holmes wrote a paragraph or two in the beginning of the textbook that First Church, which was our founding name, always read this passage, or they might have sung it even. And I so fondly remember Theodora, who passed away this past January, reading it often for me. And she will say, "Welcome and peace be to you, stranger." And I've paraphrased some of the words. "Enter freely, the door is open, and you are welcome. You're welcome here. There's room here for everyone. I have prepared the place. It's warm and it's cheerful, and you will find peace and rest. The table is prepared, and all the good of life awaits you. I have a chair for you. Sit, rest, refresh your soul. Everything is yours, and you are so welcome." So we begin. Let's start the morning off with a word. We say a word, a prayer, an affirmative idea. Please join with me in celebrating consciousness and spiritual truth. There were slides, maybe you don't have them. Please join with me in celebrating consciousness and spiritual truth. And if these are new words to you, we will explain them more as we go along today. Let me start by saying consciousness, personal consciousness, can be thought of as your total awareness. Each of us are beings of light and wonder, so your consciousness is your level, your totality of knowing. We're always celebrating you and your expanding realization. All of life is evolving. Each one of us is growing, and we're all on a pathway. So we start out by celebrating the idea of consciousness and expansion and growth. And with this, there is a realization that there is spirit within each and every one of us. So I've said, again, we celebrate consciousness, okay? The sum total of your knowing, my knowing, and we know that it's evolving, and we celebrate spiritual truth here. And to give you an idea, spiritual truths, I will say, are the big truths. And as you go to our glossary in our textbook, these truths are often beyond facts. You can have facts. You can have a medical from Quest Diagnostics or something. It might say something about your blood work, okay? That's a fact, right? But the spiritual truths that we talk about are bigger than your test results and they're bigger than your bank account. Our glossary would say spiritual truths are ultimate and they're incapable of further analysis. Spiritual truths are complete. They're changeless. And we will help you as you join into our classes and our Sunday morning gatherings. We will help you understand, what consciousness is and what spiritual truths are. And that's part of the reason you come and you join. You realize, and we'll remind you of some of these greater ideas about yourself, which might be eluding you. You may not know how great you are. You may not know that you're one with the one. You may not realize that you have the power you have. So our teaching is simple. It's a simple teaching. If there's anything you don't understand, please reach out to us. I would personally be happy to take the time and clarify anything that is challenging for you. I know sometimes the textbook itself and some of the books seem like it's a lot of information, different language, and I'm here to tell you we can break it down, we can simplify these ideas. The textbook, being a textbook, can be difficult for many. If you get involved with the study, most likely you would purchase a textbook and then you would purchase, as I would have 25, 30 years ago, you would purchase what was called a concordance. I'm sure Reverend Judith and others here have them. The concordance goes with a textbook and it explains where many of these terms are. And you can help navigate the textbook a little bit better. And maybe in the textbook you will read passages and in the glossary. These are all good. They're good places to start or to take a class, a basic class here. I know when I started reading the textbook many years ago, we were always pointed to the first 4 chapters of the textbook and the glossary. Because in the glossary you're going to find definitions of what is affirmative prayer, what is treatment. And I can quote many of the definitions by heart. The affirmative prayer process, for example, in the glossary, there's 2 definitions, but one of which is it's the time, the art, the method of ridding this negation or this negativity from your consciousness. So there's one thing to have an affirmation that all is well, and there's one thing to have an affirmation that I trust life and that I, anything positive, but taking the time, the art, and the method of actually bringing yourself from a place of affirming to a place of knowing and belief. When you start to understand that more, you're really starting to understand the affirmative process, the affirmative prayer treatment process. And there's many, many books that you can start with that may be a little bit easier to start with. Not that they're better or that there's anything wrong with the textbook, but there's other books we can suggest as well. If you're not a real reader, and I'm hearing that as feedback from some of our classes and the work we've done, and we've explored healthy and evolving spiritual centers, there's a generation that's coming up that aren't really readers. They quickly go to their devices or they go to audio. And if you happen to be one of those, if you're not a real reader, there's a lot of different ways of obtaining this information and material. There's audio material that we can suggest for you also. And we ourselves at First Center have a ton of material on our website. Also on our YouTube channel. I don't have the addresses. Jimmy or Anthony can put them on the screen for you. But if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find countless talks. You'll find meditations that can be very, very useful. If you go to our Facebook page, you can find lessons and talks probably throughout the past couple of years. The website has a lot of Raymond Charles Barker's work, and so we have a treasure trove of information ourselves that you can listen to anytime. Pardon me? Jimmy is telling me that the links to all of these are in the chat room. I want to remind you next of a famous statement from our own Louise Hay, author of You Can Heal Your Life. And most of you know, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, Louise Hay, once upon a time, was taking the very same classes that you are, if you're attending, and she was learning how to be a practitioner of religious science right here at First Center. We were called First Church of Religious Science, but Louise Hay started her studies here the same way many of you did, and she had a statement that's been repeated thousands of times now regarding the teaching. She said, it's all very simple. And that's what I'm trying to convey today, because sometimes it seems like, oh my God, I can't relate to this. They're using language I don't understand. We don't mean to. The book was written 1929 or something like that. Is that correct? Yeah, and truth is truth. It stands. But it's a textbook. And I've been wrestling with that textbook for at least 3 or 4 decades, and I always go back to it and I find something amazing in it. But it isn't the type of book probably you read from cover to cover. It's something you refer to probably all through your life. There's several books that I have that are like that. So the teaching is very simple. That's the thing to understand. Please don't let anybody make you think it's difficult. Remember what I just read from Ernest Holmes. There is room here for everyone. Everyone. You don't need to be a great scholar or student, he went on to say. I have prepared a place for you that's warm and wonderful, where you will find rest and peace. That's really what you find here as you join in this community, and what you'll find as you join in the teaching itself. You can learn to create a place that's warm and wonderful and learn how to nurture yourself. And as you do, you'll undoubtedly learn how to nurture others. Your whole life can be lifted up. It's all there for you. The good of life awaits you. Thankfully, I found the Science of Mind after I'd been teaching You Can Heal Your Life. I was facilitating a group for a few years. And I'm grateful that it happened that way, that I was able to help and teach lots of people, groups, people who were dealing with AIDS and cancer and many other things. I found the work of Louise Hay to be of immense value to everybody at the time. And so when I walked into a Science of Mind center, I didn't have very much of a problem, because I had already been exposed to much of the principles through You Can Heal Your Life. And that made, for me, tackling the textbook much easier, because I acquired the basic understanding of how it works. So always here at the center, I intend to make it easy for you to understand, because as Raymond Charles Barker and others have said, it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes people, find the readings complicated. It doesn't have to be that way. I remember attending a religious science center in the 1980s, if you can believe it, and I recall thinking that they were making this unnecessarily difficult, because there were books that were coming out during that era by people like Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and a whole host of authors. They were all seeming to write around the same decade or so, that made teaching this material much more accessible. Louise Hay, of course, I mentioned she started here at this center, was a real gift to our movement, because not only did her book sell over 60 million copies, she reached over 100 million people. And they're still reading her book. So she was really singularly one of the biggest boosts for New Thought in the past century. She started a publishing house also that was devoted primarily to New Thought authors. And so she started here with us, and in the same tradition, we intend to make it easy, make our presentations understandable for the younger people and the newer people, and take some of the mystery out of the mysterious. Please don't let anyone tell you, ever tell you that they can tell you all about God. That subject is that which cannot be described. I've taken so many courses through ministry, and the nameless thing, that which cannot be described. So you've got to try to figure out your own notion of that, your own experience of that, and we help you with that here. So let's start with that which cannot be described or named. In our textbook, just the titles of the first chapter will give you a clue. The first chapters are entitled, number one is The Thing Itself. I remember as a young person hearing that, and I wanted to bless myself and think, well, who the heck will talk about God as the thing itself? Well, that's how Ernest Holmes starts out the book. And the second chapter is the way it works. So he's talking about this power and this presence that's in you and how it works. And the next chapter is what it does. So we're observing how it operates, right? And the fourth chapter is how to use it. And that ties into the statement that we all know of Ernest Holmes is there's power for good in the universe, and you can use it. So you have power. I have power. We use it constructively sometimes, and sometimes we use it destructively, but we're always using the power. So there's an attempt to explain in the book how it works, what it does, and how we can personally begin to use it. If you read those chapters, you'll quickly understand that we're not talking about God that's elsewhere. We're not talking about some guy up above who's meting out punishments and rewards below. What we're talking about here always is a presence, never an absence. And you can begin to think about that and contemplate that, a presence always. Every encounter you have is a holy encounter because you being an individualization of God life are encountering another individualization of God life in every encounter. So as your consciousness grows, you understand who you are more and more, and you understand more and more, the people who travel life with you and the people you encounter are all spiritual beings as you are. They might be showing up in a different way. You may not particularly like their behavior, but they're evolving as you are, and everybody and all of us are part of this one life. We're never going to tell you who to pray to or how to pray. That's not what we do. We have lots of suggestions, but ultimately these are decisions you make for yourself. We will help you understand some of the key points of the text. Again, because for some the text is, it may not be plain to you. In some places it could even seem contradictory. So we are available. I am. Judith is. Send your questions in if you have any misunderstandings or you need clarification. Ultimately, in this teaching, all of this is something you figure out for yourself through practice. When I first got involved in the teaching, we used to be, I remember the teachers were teaching how to do affirmative prayer, and people were doing affirmative prayer for parking places. Now, New Yorkers probably can't relate to that so much, but that's a big thing in the South. And I used to think that was kind of silly. But what they're really attempting to do is to prove to themselves how this law works, how it will respond to you. If we as a team, as a minister or practitioner could do this for you, of course, we would try to do it for you to make your life easier. But it doesn't work that way. At best, what we can do is we can teach you what we know of the affirmative life, of affirmative prayer treatment, so you can practice it for yourself. Ernest Holmes famously said, suffering is not God ordained. If you were in a 12-step meeting, they would say misery is optional. Same idea. Suffering's not of God. Misery is really optional. So if our life is not working well, then there is something for us to look at and something for us within ourselves to change. You hear me often say, whatever's going on with you, it's about a thought. And Louise Hay would have said, it's only a thought or a series of thoughts, and these can be changed. So that's the work. We're always in the business of trading in the lesser ideas that are creating our life for the greater. We're always looking to hitch our wagon to the stars, Emerson would have said. Because as you raise your thoughts from these lesser positions that we've clung to, you step into another world. Because if your focus is on high or on the greater idea, it's almost like you're just drawn right to the bigger picture. So again, that ties into that idea of the bigger bucket. So let's accept these ideas for the moment. If you're new to the center and there's anything that we cover that you don't understand, you can always reach out to me or one of the ministers anytime by placing a phone call. Jimmy can either answer or get you the answer, or he can call me and I will call you back myself. So we are here, and it's a great day because we intend it to be a great day. We can start now and always with the knowing that there is one mind. That's a new term for many of you. One mind meaning there is one God, one presence, one intelligence, one creative activity in all the world and all the universe. And you are definitely a part of that creative action. We would say that you are an individualization of it. An individualization of the creative spirit of God itself. And we want you to know it is your mind right here and right now. It's in you, operating through you. And it's in my mind as well. Please understand that it's within you, operating through you, right and now. This conscious mind is an infinite presence that operates in me, as me, through me at all times, and it's directed by my conscious thought. And that works the same for you as well. I celebrate this truth, this unity. Think of unity. Everything's included, right? And everyone's included. I celebrate this unity, this realization of this one power, this realization of oneness, that the whole world and everything in it and all people are connected. We're all part of this one energy. I share it with all that are gathered today in this room and who will be listening to this message throughout the week. Let us all unite in the knowing of this truth today. We are all one with the one. We are all one with each other. With this spiritual knowledge, we are open to a greater expression of our spiritual selves. We're better able to embody the attributes of God when we are centered in the knowing who we are. We become more peaceful. We become more powerful, quietly poised. We become whole, complete. We develop a sense of positive expectancy because we have this connection in this faith. I celebrate this truth here, this oneness that's in all of us on this planet and in all spaces everywhere, that is evolving and going forward in divine order in all places. And I know it is so, and so it is. I know also that it works, and I open myself up to greater and greater expression of it. A few weeks ago, a wise man asked if there's going to be a meditation before the Sunday talk. And again, I'm borrowing from some of Celeste Turkin's meditation talk here, Dr. Celeste. And so this wise man asked if there was going to be a meditation before the Sunday talk. And I informed him that I was the leader of this meditation, and I would be glad to lead him in meditation. If you've ever attended one of our meditation classes, you may have noticed it seems like a long spiritual mind treatment with some creative visualization that's added in. And you're right. I personally don't practice guided meditation. Because I rarely follow the guide. I get lost in they'll take you up and down paths and all that. And they start me off well, and then I kind of like go off to my own place. The guide suggests that we leave the grassy pasture by the river, and we climb up the mountain and down the things, and eventually up to a castle or something like that. And there we will find the answer to our spiritual question. In my case, I remained relaxed and resting on the shore and wait for them all to come back. So for me, it seems as if the meditation is trying to take me somewhere outside of myself. It isn't necessarily, but that's the way it works for me. It might work better for you. There are many forms of meditation. So we're talking today in addition to bigger buckets and how to develop bigger buckets, we're talking about all the different kinds of meditation. And any and all can be good, by the way. So please don't ever say, well, religious science, they tell me you have to meditate this way, because we don't. You can determine the best form of meditation for yourself. We'll give you a few clues and suggestions, though. You might ask yourself, what am I willing to do? What form of meditation am I willing to do and practice? This is similar to the question of what's the best exercise for you to do? And the answer is going to be, it's going to be the one you're willing to repeatedly do with dedication and enjoyment. Same for meditation, right? The best form of meditation for me is mindfulness. It is being aware of, my intuition, what's speaking to me, and beginning to listen to it. My instructions for others on how to meditate are sit down, be quiet, and listen. Because there is that which is within you that always knows. If you can slow yourself down long enough, you will obtain guidance. Listen to what you might describe as your inner self or spirit. Most of us call that guidance. It's always there if we can slow ourselves down enough and take a pause. There's no need for special, mats or pillows, fabrics, music. There's certainly no need for distractions. So let's let go of all the stimulation, knowing that as you do so, anything you need to know for your personal safety, you will know, and you're free then to listen in silence. To me, this is the difference between affirmative prayer and meditation, because in affirmative prayer, we're directing our thoughts, and it's a little bit different. Affirmative prayer, or what we call spiritual mind treatment, is directing your conscious mind to the divine law by talking to and thinking along specific lines. Meditation is the act of listening to your inner self, your divine self. This is the same advice marriage counselors give out when they're asked, how can I learn what it is that my partner wants? And the counselor will generally reply, listen. And yes, this takes a lot of practice, because people are pretty good at talking at people. Most people aren't really good at listening. You can go back and say, would you please repeat back what you thought I just said? And you'd be surprised how often people don't really hear you, because this is a problem we have as people. We have a history with people, so we have a lot of preconceived ideas. So learning to listen is really a practice in and of itself. There's an old joke. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? You know the answer?
Practice.
Well, she does know. Practice. Well, it's an old joke, as I say. So there it is. Judith had it first try. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. Deepak Chopra once said that he practices meditation twice a day for 20 minutes. Unless he's been very, very busy, then he does it 3 times a day. So do you have to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day? No, absolutely not. You have to meditate for as long as it takes you to experience the desired result for you. So, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be, really, see, there's no rules to this. So once again, this is entirely up to you. It's a little bit like affirmative prayer, where Ernest Holmes says, it's the time, and it's the method of ridding this negativity. So you can come to the conclusion that you're living and moving in this divine substance. When I was reading online descriptions of types of meditation, literally there's dozens and dozens and dozens. There was one form that required that you remain in silence for 10 days. Now that would be torture for me. I don't know how that could possibly be done. That would not be a meditation as far as I'm concerned. This talk was originally called Mindful Meditation and Me. So we're going to be calling it Bigger Buckets today, because I'm borrowing from the Ernest Holmes material. Because you can learn how to open yourself up to much greater good through meditation than you have up until now. And I would also add through affirmative prayer. So I found a way that works for me, and you can use it to find your own way. Many of you use, and I use, affirmations, and they're really powerful, especially if you repeat them and you bring yourself to a place where you believe the affirmations. I can hear in my mind Dr. Ernest Holmes. He was always on his radio show. You can still listen to them on YouTube. Bellowing out, "There is a power in the universe greater than you." And you can use it, right? So remember, you have the power to choose your own experience because you make the way that works for you. You can meditate anywhere, anytime, any way you choose to. Recently, I've been listening to some of you. You've been very clever with your iPhones and your smartphones. You have reminders that are set up, I don't know, every couple hours, with an affirmation. Or it's a reminder for you to take a pause. And if you're doing that regularly throughout the day, that's a meditation. It's a reset button. It's the pause that refreshes. So that was really wonderful. So there's all these wonderful ways of interacting with spirit, and all of it's good if it works for you. The challenge or the problem for most people is that they forget. They start out well, they have good intentions. We have New Year's resolutions. We really intend to get it together, and starting today, I'm going to do all this stuff, but people forget, and that's a problem. Louise Hay always said, there's that line, remembering and forgetting. It's what we do. So we want to encourage you to develop a practice that works for you, that you enjoy. Obviously, we don't recommend that you do deep meditation and things, guided processes while you're driving a car, because people used to put those cassettes and CDs into their cars. That would not be the best time to be doing that. All right? Driving could be, what you can do while you're driving? That would be a good time to practice mindfulness, where you turn your cell phones off, you certainly don't text, and you're mindful, and be acutely aware of what your surroundings are. It'll probably make you a better driver on the road and safer. You can do spiritual mind treatment for patience and safe travels. Dr. Celeste said, "I am reminded of a sign I saw years ago." It read, the sign said, "Be alert." And she said, "We need more alerts." And that was her joke. Another little anecdotal story. Buddha had a sermon to the people of Kalama, in which he said, in so many words, "Don't believe anything anyone tells you, even if they are a friend or a teacher, or even if they are the Buddha." So that was Buddha teaching. Don't even believe me. We ask here only that you practice. You practice and see it work for yourself. You don't have to believe anything I say or we say. That came from Buddha, that comes from Dr. Celeste, and that comes from me. Please don't believe it just because we say it. Practice it. Experiment with it yourself and see if it works for you. Mindfulness itself is a basic human ability to be fully present. And that's really good if you can, because, a lot of us have these stories that are built up within you. Jimmy's here and Judith. I might have a lot of stories about them or anybody. And I enter new moments, and they're not really clean and new because I got all this, baggage. So it's tough to see people in a new moment when you're carrying a lot of stuff. Mindfulness is the basic ability that we all have to be fully present and drop the story, so we can be aware, of who we are, and this is a fresh encounter. It can be if you are mindful about it. Mindfulness also works best by not being reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. So this is a practice. You can sit down and have a more formal meditation, or you can be more intentional and aware of the things that you're saying and doing throughout the day. And as if we've said before, you can set up reminders to yourself on your devices. Reverend Dr. J. Scott Neal passed away a few weeks ago. And he oftentimes described the science of mind as the art of getting better buckets, hence our name today, our new title. He excitedly said, "There is an unlimited abundance available to us, but we don't want to show up with a spoon or a cup when we could get a bucket full." Again, he's tapping into the same message that Louise Hay tapped into. There's this unlimited abundance that's available to everyone. But your consciousness is about your bucket. If your consciousness is one of impoverishment and poverty and I don't deserve, that's the bucket you're approaching the ocean of life with. And so what you really want to do is have a much bigger vision of your life. Hitch your wagon to that star that Emerson talked about, because you will literally walk into the bigger experience as you create that vision for yourself. So we don't want to show up with a spoon or a cup when we could get a bucket full. In the book, How to Use the Science of Mind, Dr. Ernest Holmes said, "If the buckets don't hold enough, the practitioner should treat for increased consciousness of substance or activity, of happiness, or whatever it is that's needed." Again, if your buckets don't hold enough, let your spiritual work be about increasing your consciousness so you may receive more what you need. For many years, you've heard me say or ask the question Louise Hay asked, and you can heal your life. And her question was always, what are you approaching the ocean of life with? What kind of container is it? Is it a Dixie cup or is it something bigger? I finally realized that her inspiration was from Ernest Holmes. And it was found in the book, How Do I Use the Science of Mind? So everybody is saying the same thing. We want our mental expectancy and acceptance. We want this expectancy to increase. If the buckets don't hold enough, we want to affirm that consciousness has expanded to the greater need that we have. The bigger the bucket, if you will, if you work with consciousness, your bucket will continually expand and hold more. You don't have to get what the birds got for breakfast, is what my father used to say. You can, you really have the capacity to live a great life. And I'm not just talking about materially, I'm talking about in terms of your human interactions, your employment, your just sense of aliveness and joy. If you've given up on yourself, then you've given up. So let's all be resolved to, in consciousness, create bigger buckets. Let me paraphrase Dr. Holmes' definition of meditation, which he describes as being in contemplation or in continuous thought. He says that in the science of mind, we intend to convey more than a recognition of the divine within, including the certainty of our oneness with the whole. We want to let you know that it's always there and it's always available. As we commune with this awareness that God is in me, operating through me, as we commune with this awareness, we'll sense the power and the wisdom that's there within us. And this brings harmony to us, brings harmony into our lives and our affairs, and it establishes a law of health and prosperity. When you're communing with these bigger ideas and you're bringing them into your consciousness, we become a light to all who cross our pathway. We want to grow bigger buckets. We want our consciousness to expand. Now here's the thing I'll tell you. Your consciousness is expanding anyway. Consciousness is expanding in all places with everyone. But you can accelerate the process. There can be a quickening as you learn to practice this teaching. So let's do it. We begin where we are. There's teachers of meditation. I've had many in my life. Some of the teachers start you off with guided breathing exercises. If you wish to incorporate this into your practice, that's good. It's a good method of relaxation, and it's a good spiritual practice. Dr. Celeste calls it deep breathing through your feet. And this is an amusing idea, she thought. It calls for you to visualize being grounded to the earth and pulling oxygen into your body by imagining it coming up through your feet, into your body, into your head, and draining back down. Is it necessary to do all this? No, absolutely not. But it's relaxing. You can also do this by breathing in and saying, every time you breathe in, God is. And as you exhale, you could say silently to yourself, and I am. Whether you say it aloud or silently to yourself, what you're really saying is, God is God. While you're drawing attention to your breathing and directing your attention away from your problems and challenges, you're concentrating on the internal. Another type of mindful meditation is through movement. Being focused on what your activity is, this is really cool. You could be brushing your teeth, you could be washing your dishes, you could be gardening, you could even be ironing your clothes. You can be meditating through these processes where you're actually doing movement. Not only does it make the time and the task go by quickly, but it relieves a tremendous amount of tension in your body because you're being focused on one activity. And then it's being focused on one activity, oneness. So that's a little bit of information for those of you who are always multitasking. The suggestion here is don't multitask, be focused on one thing at a time. It might be better for you to do that. Now there's many other activities such as Tai Chi, yoga, or even walking that can become a mindful meditation. The best form of meditation is always, again, going to be the one that you do and the one that you enjoy. So again, we don't say Greg said Science of Mind teaches this or that. We're going to say straight up, all of them are good if you like them and you enjoy them. And all of this, the whole talk today, relates to building up consciousness, developing positive expectancy, bigger buckets, and it's a practice. And we want to have at least one word on mantras. I've done a lot of chanting in my younger life. And I remember one word, the word was Om. It's O-M, but it's pronounced like in 3 syllables, like A-U-M, Om. It represents the union of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And it's perhaps one of the best known chants in the world. I know a few others from my chanting days, and they're very powerful. There is Om, like I just said, which some people say is the sound of the universe. There's another mantra well, first of all, a mantra is a word or a sound that's repeated over and over in meditation. Om perhaps is the most famous, followed by another that's all over the world, but predominantly in India, which is Om, same word, Om Namah Shivaya. Om and Om Namah Shivaya are 2 of the most well-known that are practiced by millions and millions of people. You can read about it. I did some reading about it. You might like chanting. I've been in places where people have chanted for hours, and practitioners believe the mantra infuses positive energy and it helps in getting rid of negative things you're hanging on to. The thought also is that focused repetition of these words will enable you to allow Spirit to guide you. And we can talk about this fascinating subject at another time, and we can perhaps even do a class on it because it's very fascinating. But going back to what we were talking about, some of these processes can have the tendency, you get caught up in the technique and it can take you outside of yourself, and that's really not what we want you to do. We want you always to remember that whatever you're doing with meditation is an inner journey. Ernest Holmes was talking about finding, remember he said, I want to find a person who is so redeemed from the bondage of self, and I want to commune with that person. So most of us who are on this path of science of mind, who are New Thought students, are desiring to release the old baggage, the old belief system, and the things that are holding us back. So any of these tools that we brought up today could be potentially useful and helpful. We will remind you here every Thursday, every Sunday, that you are an individualization of God, life yourself. So whatever form of meditation that you like or you choose to use is fine. It's always for you to tap into that which is within you. You've probably heard this one before in classes. It's a little bit corny, but in case you haven't, if you spell out the word guru, you will see a clue. Here it is in all capitals, assuming Anthony has the slides. He doesn't. Okay. Guru, if you spell it out, is G-U-R-U. It's more impactful if the slide were up there. G, it's like I'm saying Judith, G-U-R-U. So, so you just look at the word and there it is. You've probably heard it before. It's, as I say, it's corny, but that word, G-U-R-U. So we don't look for gurus on the outside. Where's the guru? It's within you. It's a part of you. So you will see the answer is within you. I hope you see that. I've spelled it out 5 times. G-U-R-U. That's great. It's great that you were able to see it. And that's the thing you honor and celebrate, that part, the you, this God in you, the hope of your glory. This is what they taught me in Unity 25 years ago. The best kept secret of the ages is that thing is in you. We looked throughout the mountains and we've traveled the world looking for it. And the best kept secret throughout time is this presence, this power is in you, operating through you. Online, there's a lot of confusion about mantras that may be presented as short affirmations. I believe affirmations are a good part of spiritual practices, and they will help you tremendously to focus on positive mindfulness and build up your consciousness. Here's one. Every day in every way, I am getting better and better. We all have our favorites, I think, who are part of this group. If you're new, you may not have one, so adopt one of ours until you form one for yourself. One that has been around for decades is, I am supplied and supported. It can be very, very helpful for you to keep saying that to yourself throughout your days. I am supplied and supported. Or another old-time favorite is, whatever this is, it's God in my life. So that can bring you to a place of relaxation where you can release any sense of struggle. So you can start with an affirmation, you can start with a sound. It doesn't matter. Again, find something that works for you. If you're unclear of how to do affirmative prayer, we will have more talks about affirmative prayer. You can always call the center if you want to talk more about it. It's not complicated. There's nothing we teach here that's complicated. It's all very simple. Getting back to the subject of meditation and me, which is where we started, I don't close my eyes when I'm meditating, though you might want to. I use a focal point. It can be any object in a room or on the horizon that I can look at and focus on deliberately, and I more or less blur out everything else. I do this because I've somewhat trained my body once I close my eyes to go to sleep. For me, it's better for me to with open eyes focus on something. This may be why people are told not to meditate while they are lying down, because oftentimes they just go to sleep. If you're wanting to use guided meditation for sleep, that's good. There's several really great meditations on YouTube that you can use for that purpose. Or you could create your own for your nightly routine. A lot of people really love Louise Hay's meditation, which is entitled Deep Relaxation and What I Believe. Many, many people throughout the years would say to me that they go to bed with Louise every night. And what they're really talking about is that wonderful meditation. You can purchase it inexpensively on iTunes or Apple Play. To bathe in those ideas as you're about to go to bed, it's just another way that could be very relaxing and very helpful. Again, it's called Deep Relaxation and What I Believe. It's one of the best. You can even choose a separate mantra for this purpose. There's many, so choose your own. Some of our great New Thought teachers, like Dr. Barker, Dr. Grayson, and I'm thinking now of Dr. Bill Tolliver also, told us in all our classes that when people fall asleep during their talks, they're opening up their consciousness to the direct impress of their thoughts by the speaker. I'm sure Judith heard that from somebody too. So if you're here and you're half listening, we're getting the message directly through to your subconscious. I remember being amused by all this. Dr. Celeste reminded me of this, and I believe many of us were told this in our classes. So I guess what I'm saying is these audio recordings are of value. So why not take advantage of them? Because all of us have them on. If you've got a smartphone, you've got YouTube, and you can listen to any of these. So I guess in conclusion today, our intention is to build a bigger life. We have the power and the capacity to create a better world. We can approach the ocean of life with bigger buckets. Whatever the problem is or the challenge that might be in front of you, you always have the capacity to be greater than what's in front of you. I've been in times in my life where there's been people who have been sick, and there's been transitions of life, and I was always reminded by the great teachers, whatever is going on in your life, you are more than the circumstances of your life. So you have what it takes, each and every one of you. And as you come here week by week, we're going to be reminding you of the beauty, the truth, and the wonder of you. And we're going to give you lots of techniques for you to discover it.